My main takeaway from this conversation is that we're all bullies. So good.
Yeah.
Go team.
Yeah, I feel like
Good
all our
team.
things
What?
work on it.
Was off, and she's like, "This is what happens when women are off. You just keep changing things. More structure."
Look
I
at
was flying
that.
to the Netherlands.
Look at
Oh,
that.
gee.
It was turbulent. I was like, "Oh crap, it's happening. What do I do now?"
Scary. Oh, it's happening. It's happening. Referring to it as like someone as a whistleblower. I mean, what's the first thing that comes into your mind? Is that they snitched? I mean, right?
Yeah, the thing is whether the speak up or the whistleblowing thing is right or wrong. I think you can call it whatever word you want, but it's still an intimidating thing, right? Like generally
Yeah,
people are just
definitely.
not going to engage. And it's always just say, we're hearing about incidents too late, it might be in a hospital setting, it might be patient neglect, it might be, there's so many scandals that have opened up. Things, I'm glad you're here. It was quite weird trying to do this without you.
Oh, really?
I think
Wow.
we're so used to, I think used to having you on it, like when
And interrupting.
no, just like I think it's just the dynamic. Like you're trying to have a conversation. Like me and Tigger are trying to have a conversation. We actually recorded it twice. So we did it the first time, half an hour, and then we were like, we stopped and they were like, "This is kind of strange." We went back to it the next day. But
I
yeah,
think we
it was
actually
very weird.
moved that we had mono. I think we shifted it like twice. We moved it like twice or three times. I told my wife, and then so my wife knew that ink was off, and she's like, "This is what happens when women are off. You just keep changing things. More structure."
Look at that.
Yeah, no, it's crazy. Every time we schedule a webinar and then move it, the first thing she asks is Ing's working? I'm like, yeah, she is. She's like, okay, so why is it shifted then? Like, what's happening?
That's
Like, I think we moved this yesterday, and she's like, okay, so why is it shifted then if Ing is back? But anyways, cool.
Don't give me just
Uh,
as a sidebar, like the whole Bali trip, I literally just packed my bags and rocked up at the airport. Don't make me plan a trip. Kholo did everything. I'm just like, and he's like, what do you think of this place? I'm like, great. Just book it. Just book it.
that's me. Yeah,
Yeah.
I don't plan
I just want to show up.
baseball.
Hey,
Same.
I'm
here.
chilled.
Same. I just do it. Let's go. I just do it.
Yeah. Well, that's interesting. Yeah, I think every couple has the who is the super organizer and who is the person that just rocks up.
And I can be quite controlling. Like I want to have
I'm
control.
quite surprised by that actually. I'm quite surprised by that.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm very surprised by that. You strike me as the organizer.
In certain aspects, yes, but with trips,
Does he hold all the passports?
Well, he did, because I obviously flew alone. Do you guys want to know the backstory? Sorry, this is like random chit chat now before this. So he'd obviously booked the flights and stuff like that. Man puts me in an emergency exit by myself. So I'm like, sir, if touch wood, something happens, who's supposed to open this door, my angel? Not me. I was by myself, like next to the emergency exit, and there's no window. And I like looking out the window, but it's fine. Extra leg room, plenty of room for activities. Then on the way back, that's obviously when, because he flew from Dubai. On the way back, I do have a video of him saying, passport, give me your passport. I was like, you look like I don't know, like I'm being held hostage. I was like, can I please have it before we get to security? It's like, I'm not completely incapable.
Is that video
Actually crazy.
No,
Sorry, no, go on.
Mm.
I've flown so many times, right? And then you know how they give you that thing, that tutorial, what to do in case anything happens when you pull that the oxygen mask thing,
Yeah.
whatever that. I have no idea what to do. I've watched them do it so many times. I still don't know what to do if anything goes wrong. God forbid. But genuinely, I look at them. I pay so much attention. I've actually watched videos even, but I genuinely have no idea what to do. And this one time, I was flying to the Netherlands, and it was turbulent. I was like, "Oh crap, it's happening. What do I do now?"
Scary. Oh, it's happening. It's happening.
Friday night. Luckily, it didn't happen. It wasn't what I thought. It was just turbulent. But yeah, I genuinely, I don't know how many times I've been on a plane, but I have no idea what to do if things just go
Touch
south.
wood.
I just,
Yeah. But you
Maybe that's
see,
yeah, no,
but
maybe that's a good.
that's why you're exactly why the airline companies tell people take care of your own stuff first before helping other people.
Yes, if airline safety videos have taught me. My Sean is that running joke about like kids. He's like, if airline safety videos have taught me anything, you put your own mask on first before the child.
100%. 100%. Liability. I, yeah, I don't know, but I wouldn't want to be tested if I knew. But the other thing is, I fall asleep instantly on the plane. So, like, I
That's
literally, I
what-
sit down and in 2 minutes on the
You're like Kolo as well. I'm like, now what am I supposed to do?
phone.
Watch the movie.
Like, don't just tell me it's angry.
I get it.
Like, how are you asleep? I'm like, I'm just tight. Like I'm on the
And
plane.
I've got
like,
the
what?
neck pillow and the armor, the silk armor with like trazodone, like nothing.
Yeah, I just,
no, but I've actually won, like genuinely, in the case that something happened. Obviously, I've never been in a situation. I hope I don't ever get in one. But if anything happens, what is the procedure? Like, does someone just speak up? Like, is it the pilot's duty to be like, hey, yo, just calm down? It's
no,
it's about you.
the hostesses and air hostess and
Yeah.
Yeah.
They'll say something.
the male version of that hoster.
I've never seen males. Personally. I've never seen males.
Really?
Never.
Quite a few males on
Never.
speaking board. There was,
Never seen. Never.
is it a steward is on a boat? No.
Stewardess. Yeah, stewardess, I think.
No, but stewardess is female, Ange. That's not very gender neutral.
I know, steward.
Anyway, anyway,
Well, they just
they're the
cabin-
ones I sorted out.
Yeah.
But it's crazy how I was speaking about planes, right? Because I think we actually had a chat about this. How one of our previous discussions was speaking up save lives. And in this case, literally, the air hostess speaking up could save lives or cause panic in my case, because I don't know what to do. So, yeah.
Yeah, well, depends how bad it is. Because if they're locked into their own seats, you're on your own.
Also, speaking of planes, interesting what happened to those Boeing whistleblowers, hey? Transition.
What happened to them?
There was that because Boeing had all of those issues and a lot of like security checks and things procedures not being followed. And there was a couple of those whistleblowers that disappeared and are no longer with us.
Really?
Yeah, it happened a couple years ago. I think there was like there's a few people that spoke out
both John Farnan and Dr. Dean have died this year, leading to questions about potential connection between their deaths and their work.
You guys don't know, it was a whole- I refuse to get on
Yeah.
a Boeing with that. If I'm on a Boeing, I hate flying Boeing now. Hate it. Put me on an Airbus.
This is why I like pleading ignorance. And I don't like knowing stuff. I just do stuff. Now I know stuff and I get scared to do stuff.
That is quite great. That's scary. And yeah, stuff like that just feels. You don't have to read more into that, but that is yeah. That's what we were saying before was about like it's a very we have to tread so carefully around this kind of topic because like whistleblowing or not whistleblowing, not knowing the whistle is not conformity. Our negative form of it is just fear and intimidation and viewing and like there's a reason why people don't do it, right? Because scary.
What do you call it in Zulu? You call it being an impimpi, like a snitch.
Snitch.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, I think the term whistleblowing I mean, it says exactly what needs to be done, but I think it has such a negative connotation, like referring to it as like someone as a whistleblower. I mean, what's the first thing that comes into your mind? Is that they snitched? I mean, rightfully
Yeah.
so. If they're a whistleblower in a context like, for example, with Boeing, they are the ones like speaking out. I feel like there's such a negative connotation to that word being a whistleblower.
Yeah.
I mean, there is, right? But at the same time, don't get me wrong, yes, there is a negative connotation, but at the same time, it's also, at least in my opinion, speaking up, like I said in the beginning, can genuinely save lives. Obviously, now you're putting that pressure on someone to point out when something goes wrong. Like you said, Mano, it's a very scary thing to do. It isn't as plain and simple as just speaking up and things change or whatever. And it's crazy because in a bunch of industries, a lot of industries actually, speaking up, I'm trying to refrain from the word whistleblowing. Speaking up, right, can genuinely have one of two consequences. It might be bad, it might be good, right? In healthcare, for example, there's a case where 82% of healthcare professionals witnessed concerns that could have been avoided and that could actually harm patients, but only 32% actually reported those incidents, right? Why? They weren't all reported. I don't know. I assume fear, fear of the consequence, fear of the outcome. I don't know. But speaking up, right, can be, in my opinion, excuse me, an act of conformity to shared values, in the sense that you are trying to do, in the case of healthcare, you are trying to look out for other people, for other patients, for the organization itself, right? But I guess it's a two-sided argument. It's a two-sided argument as to whether or not someone should or will speak up.
I think like if we go
People
back
have,
to, if we go like, for example, to like look how say workplace started, right? It started in like predominantly into like how in safeguarding, like how can tech improve safeguarding, and
yeah,
that all that initial research that came out of the early days of the the percentage of workplace concern or misconduct that goes unreported and the reason for that, and um, fear, intimidation, people don't trust that anything's going to happen anyway. We don't want to be seen as a snitch. Um, it, it is very, very closely linked to this what it was whistleblowing. And then I suppose as a sort of in an attempt to make the whistleblowing seem less intimidating and more normal, I suppose people came up with the speak up term of like, if we just,
yeah,
have a speak up culture, we all talk about things and things go wrong, then everything will be fine. But I'm not convinced that that is solved anything really. It's the thing that the greater issue is, I don't know if it's whether like how, I don't think it's whether the speak up or the whistleblowing thing is right or wrong. I think you can call it whatever word you want, but it's still an intimidating thing, right? Like generally
yeah,
people are just
definitely.
not going to engage. And it's very, very hard to make people engage in proactively going, hey, I saw something I don't think, I saw this doctor do something that wasn't actually procedurally correct or cut a corner or something. And, I think that was like my being engaged. I'm like, the chances of someone actually saying that if nothing bad happens, just don't. It's such a nuanced human behavioral thing and environmental thing that you almost want to rewire society. Imagine.
Yeah, but I think with your example, for example, a doctor cutting corners in that case, and if you compare like whistleblowing and speaking up, and just I think from my perception, and even comparing the two sort of terms, against some of the like incident types that some of our clients are currently using, like in their report flows. There's a whistleblowing category, and then there's a speaking up category. So both of those allow for somebody to report anonymously, which is great. There's a level of like security there. So that could kind of aid in that, even though I think many people will doubt the system, even if it is a safe workplace. Many people will still have some apprehension. But I think the whistleblowing aspect, from if you look at previous cases, that is my perception is that that's more attached to actually calling out the organization. So you see something massively wrong in the organization, you're going to blow that whistle. Whereas speaking up, even though it's so similar and it's like speak up if you see something, that's maybe more so on the ground. Hey, a manager stole £5 out of the straw kind of thing, you know? So they are effectively kind of the same thing. But one hints that it's slightly less than the other in a way. I don't know, just comparing it against looking at like some of the incident types and the report
No, I
flows.
think you're right. I think you're right. I think you're right. That it's like what's the blowing is more commonly associated with like, well, it's like there was the Harvey Weinstein thing that was the blowing, but I think it's more
Oh my God.
associated with a company or a singular person of power or things like that. Yeah. And I suppose if you in my mind, like whistleblowing would be like the speak up culture has failed. Someone blame it.
Yeah.
Um,
But I mean, we speak about culture a lot. A lot of our discussions are around culture. Speaking up culture is something that we spoke about a few days ago, Ingrid. Literally, we spoke about this. And I think you shared your own story even about how back in the day, whenever it was, back in the day, sounds like it was decades. But yeah, how back in the day you had your own personal story, right? Where you didn't exactly trust the system that was put in place. So I think you used your personal Gmail, whatever, to report an incident or whatever. Right. But my thing is, right, obviously again, culture, it's important, it's imperative. But when people feel aligned with an organization's mission, with culture, etc., and believe that their concerns will lead to action, reporting should, I don't know if it will, but it should become natural behavior, right? But my thing is, even if a company does have that positive culture in place, that speak up culture, etc., you can't control what someone else feels. That fear of what if. Yes, you have processes in place, you have a culture in place that promotes speaking up, that promotes pointing out whatever when something goes wrong. But natural human behavior, that fear, most people will still wonder, what if? Yes, it's written on the wall that if I speak up, nothing will happen to me. Well, it's anonymous or not, but what if? What if? You know. So I guess my point is, right? Yes, you might have company culture in place that promotes it, that makes people feel safe, but you can't control whether or not people actually do speak up or what they do report, if they report anything at all, right? And people that are bound to follow other people. There's this experiment that was conducted by, his name is Simon Ash, I think, in the 50s, and it's called the Ash Conformity experiment. So essentially, what it did was they put a group of people in one room, right, and then it showed that people will ideally follow whoever they want to follow, right? So they put people in a room, and then where people the majority gave obviously wrong answers, right? And then there was one person that had the right answer. But because everyone gave the wrong answers, despite the fact that this person knew was the right answer, he followed the group. She followed the group, followed the majority, because everyone is going this way. Although I know what the answer is, I'm going to follow these people because they're all going there, right? So, yeah, my point is you can't control what other people do, despite having systems in place that promote speaking up, that promote a healthy culture, etc.
I think we see it a lot, I think, with many organizations across the board, posters plastered around hallways, you know, newsletters going out. If you see something, say something. If you see something, speak out. And sure, it's all good and well to use those words and encourage your employees to say something, but it does definitely go deeper than that. And now, if we compare it to a whistleblowing context, you're encouraging your employees to speak out, but are you encouraging your employees to actually blow the whistle when they see something that's a lot bigger than something smaller on the ground? Because I think it also comes down to, as a part of that culture, and we also really try to share that with a lot of the people that we work with. It's about creating that shared accountability, shared responsibility with your employees as well as you. But yeah, just to go back to my point on the difference between speaking and whistleblowing, you're encouraging employees to say something if they see it, but are you encouraging them to actually pull you out as an organization and in the bigger picture?
It also reminds all of this kind of drive from being. I don't think people are trying to change a culture away from, let's just say, we're hearing about incidents too late. It might be in a hospital setting, it might be patient neglect, it might be, there's so many scandals that have happened over the last 20 years or so, where comes to light after something's died or something horrific's happened, that then there's an independent investigation, and then all this stuff comes out of, there's years of neglect, there's the systematic issues, right, or something, right? But the amount of effort it takes to change a culture and to change people's perception of processes and why we need to speak up early and what happens when we do it. Because you can't just be right, we've introduced this new process, so we bought these new tools, and this is going to help us, and everyone can do things anonymously, and this is going to help us speak up about stuff. And then you just kind of leave it there. Or it's you actually have to continuously reinforce. And generally what we see is nothing's probably going to change you're only going to see a movement between 6 and 12 months and beyond, right? And even after the 12 months mark is probably where you're going to see it's not going to be hockey stick, but you can start seeing a meaningful increase in early reporting of issues. But then to follow up on that is you then have to go and show the people or the culture, or people have to see that, hey, things have been reported, because people talk internally too, right? It's been reported, and actually the business have addressed it. There was something serious that wasn't been let go, or a process has been fixed or something. But on the business side, it is all top down. You have to introduce it to, you have to dedicate and absorb an amount of effort to changing people's behaviors. And then you have to reinforce or display hey, things are actually changing. There are positive outcomes to you speaking up. And then only after a long period of time, then people's behaviors start changing. No, actually they do care. But it's such a long game thing. And you can see why businesses struggle with it, especially in very hierarchical environments, healthcare specifically. You can, you're a junior clinician and you see the freaking head doctor or head nurse do something, or something happening in the organization. You're not going to go, likelihood, unless you're a really outspoken person, the likelihood of you saying something is extremely low. Unless there's been, on your onboarding, or there's been something that someone shared with you when you started, and you can go hey, if you see something, we really encourage you to speak up, because in the past years, all the positive crap that's happened, we've actually done things about it.
We were petrified not petrified, but we were so scared. In my first year of nursing, the doctors, and you their little student nurse, and you just you didn't really say anything, and they were there. But I will vouch for all the nurses. The nurses run the hospitals, I just like to say. No offense to the doctors, but it's true.
Yeah, I agree. I'm sorry. Yeah, I agree.
We were very relaxed.
Yeah.
I mean, but at the same time, I feel like it's also important to create that psychological safety. By psychological safety, I mean, like I said in the beginning, mentally, people want to speak up, right? But obviously they're afraid of the outcome of or what happens after I speak up. That what if lurks in their mind the entire time. When you create that psychological safety, the human mind is one of the most powerful. Man, I genuinely spend my free time studying psychology. Not officially, please, like Google, YouTube. But yeah. But and something I've learned is the more you ingrain something in someone's brain, the more they get used to it. And now, if someone spent years being afraid of whatever it might be, whether it's how they grew up, whether it's previous work, toxic culture, etc., it takes a very long time, like you said, Manu, to unlearn that and then walk into an organization. Now you walk into an organization that promotes the stuff that you were previously advised against or slapped on the wrist for. It's hard to change mindset, right? And then there's, yeah, I mean, the, when you create psychological safety, you allow people to not just speak up, but you allow them to freely speak up. Freely is a keyword here. Freely, they know for a fact that if I speak up, things are going to change. Mono will listen, etc. I don't know if you guys know Amy Edmondson, but she introduced this psychological safety framework, right, within workplaces. And essentially, it centers around the idea that a team is safe for interpersonal or personal risk taking, etc. Whenever a team member believes they can speak up. So people are more likely to take risks, positive risks, if they know that they can speak up if things go south, right? Without the fear of punishment or humiliation. The framework highlights, I think it was the importance of creating an environment where individuals actually feel comfortable expressing ideas, asking questions, and admitting mistakes and actually taking risks. So now we speak about calling out whatever, about calling out other people, speaking up, but people are also afraid to speak up when they make a mistake. Right? It's easy for me to want to call out Mano, but if I made a mistake, it's even harder for me to speak up because I'm afraid what's on the line. Obviously, I mean, yeah, there are different contexts here, but yeah, my point is that to create psychological safety, right, and that, my opinion, falls on the leaders themselves. But at the same time, I'm very big on it's a two-way street, right? Team members also need to be willing to unlearn and relearn different cultures, different ways of doing things, etc.
So I think that ties into, going back to like our early, like the inception here was safeguarding as a culture or like speaking up as a culture where you have to bring other people on board. You can't just say, we're providing tools to make you feel safe and want to do some campaign content stuff. It is actively trying to integrate your staff and your everyone involved into the actual onboarding and process and saying like, if you want to work in a place and you're very, very proud of it, we all want to work in like nice places. We're all going to have to contribute in some meaningful way towards achieving that. And so as part of that, we're going to place accountability on you to be able to enforce or enable that or that wherever it is. And I think there is where you start seeing really interesting and meaningful change. But your trick is, of course, like being able to do that in a way that is doesn't feel like your employees don't want to feel, or any worker doesn't want to feel obligated because they believe it's the employee's responsibility to look after the workplace. You know what I mean? It's like, I'm working for you. Like, it's like, in position that like, well, we're working together. It's like, well, no, it's not really how that, like, no, we don't work together. I work for you. And so it's your responsibility to make sure that you don't hire drugs or, you get the right people. Of course, that's not a blanket statement, but I think it's just so like, it's so nuanced in there. how do you, it's only going to work if everyone bought into the dream. But even in that, you're placing an obligation upon people that they might not necessarily want. If you know what I mean.
Yeah, that's true. I just wanting to kind of reflect on what TK said about leaders, and then kind of ties into what you said, Mono, when it comes to creating that psychological safety. I think I agree, TK, that it does definitely fall on the leaders. And generally, maybe definitely a flag to kind of note is if there is reluctance to, whether it be implementing processes or holding those training sessions around safeguarding, encouraging speaking out, then that kind of begs the question on, are you then afraid that you're going to be called out with those individuals? I think that's the thing. And I agree that the obligation, you kind of have to be careful not to put the sole responsibility on the employees, because then the argument is, no, but I work for you. And absolutely, the organization has a responsibility to not hire jerks, but you never know, unfortunately, what you're going to get and what situations are going to bring out the best in certain people. So the employee may, or me as an employee, I work for you, but then the counter is, I'm the employee that's working here. I've made a choice to come to this company. So it's then, I do, as cheesy as it sounds, play a part in making sure that I'm utilizing kind of what's provided to me. And this conversation, always around this conversation, brings up one of my good friends worked at, I've spoken about the story endlessly, TK, but it's the first time you're hearing it, so buckle in. But one of my very good friends at a law firm here in Joburg, they're across the globe. He had an insane experience. He's incredibly smart, amazing at his job, was, one of the top earning Canada attorney at the time. And the stories that he would come home with, because him and I were staying together at the time, on just general bullying, sexual harassment, insane stuff, absolutely insane. He absolutely did not at all feel safe to say anything. He didn't. He left eventually after doing his kind of 2 years. And then after he left, the floodgates opened and articles came out about this and everything happening. No, instead, yeah. But very interesting things that happened. But now they've kind of turned it over, sort of shuffled, because the biggest problem there was the leadership, was the very narrow-minded leadership that just wanted to kind of make their authority known, and were bullies. They were bullies. So sometimes the simplest thing in order to create psychological safety, don't be a bully. Don't bully people. No matter how big or small, don't be a bully.
I think the personality thing is interesting. Like, I think if you have a strong personality and you're very assertive, or you believe a lot in your own opinions, and you try and get your way, or you get in your way, and you're a bit competitive about ideas and things like that. Like, it's interesting how certain personality traits can be, because someone might not know they're being a bully, but because of that, built-in thing, I don't know, dominate's not the right word.
I want to interject there, because I don't know how, if you don't know that you're being a bully, then your poor behavior has been enabled somewhere else previously.
Absolutely.
You actually don't lack self-awareness. I know when I'm being a nightmare and being whatever, I can notice, I'm like, oh, okay, maybe like my wording there was a bit off and stuff like that.
100%.
There's
no, you're right. I think that's
the moment you're not, and you say something and you're like, oh, okay, and then you take a step back and you're like, that was a bit harsh. So then you can go back and like, I was a bit mean there. Sorry.
No, actually, I 100% agree with you. It is the if your behavior is not, I think some people have been, some people have um, not been called out on their behaviors in charge.
Yeah.
And they've been kind of allowed to act in certain ways because it's funny or it's entertaining or it's easier just to let this person get their way. There is definitely like some psychological thing that develops inside you where like you become less aware, self-aware of how your behaviors impact the people around you. And then you might meet someone that is a lot more sensitive to certain types of characteristics. And the moment you meet that person calls you out and then goes like, well, you can't be acting that way. You're being your behaviors are like inappropriate or like you don't actually realize how many people feel. And that's
Yeah.
when you see the real, like, that's when the coin drops, right? It's like, how does that person respond to that criticism? And to someone going like, well, you know, you, what you, how you're behaving isn't exactly, uh, you aren't perceiving your behavior the way you think you are. Like, people don't actually go,
Yeah.
oh my gosh, you're such a great guy. People go, yeah, no, thank you.
No,
Your most
100%.
asking them when was the last time somebody told you like, oh, you're so nice? Maybe think about that. When was the last time told you, oh, that's really nice of you. You're so kind. Big
Yeah.
It was
flag.
actually crazy how personalities play a huge role, especially in the workplace. Because personally, in my first year of university, when I met my wife, who was then my girlfriend, in my first year. So I was put in a position of leadership at our res, where we stayed.
Mm.
And growing up, I've always been this assertive person, etc. At the time, I took this personality test called the DISC assessment, DISC, and D is assertive, like you just like a bulldozer, basically. I is, hey, I'm happy, I love people, I speak a lot. I think S is reserved, and C is someone that just overthinks everything, right? So, the point of us taking this assessment at the time was so you can understand your own personality, but not just yours, those around you, those of who you're leading, etc. So I completely disregarded those I was leading and just, oh, I'm a D, right? So because this thinks that I'm a D, let me act like a D, right? So I just I took it up even if I took it up a notch. It got so bad that my wife, who was in my girlfriend, and a friend of mine, actually sat me down this one time and said, "TK, it's not how you talk to people. You have to understand that how you speak to Manu, for example, is not how you speak to Ingrid. You have to learn Manu, you have to learn Ingrid, you have to learn how to speak to different people, especially if you're a leader. You have to know that if I call out Manu on his BS, he won't get angry. But if I call out Ings, she's gonna crumble into a ball and start crying. You know, how do I convey the same message to Mano that I gave to Mano to Ings without creating a culture where it's toxic now, where Ings feels unsafe, right? And then it brings me to this book by Simon Sinek. Is it Sinek?
Cynic.
Next.
Yeah, Simon Sinek. It's called, I love the title, Leaders Eat Lost.
Knew
Right?
you were gonna say that one. It's a good one.
Leaders Eat Lost. And in that book, he highlights a concept called the circle of safety. Excuse me. It's a concept called the circle of safety. And essentially, it's exactly that. It highlights how leaders need to create that environment where their teams feel supported, feel safe, etc., to speak up. And the circle of safety itself, when implemented correctly, it creates a culture of cooperation, collaboration. People actually want to be involved in whatever you're doing, right? And ultimately, it makes leading pleasant, right? I've actually learned over the past few years how to speak to people and also how to perceive what someone says. Obviously, I'm not making excuses for someone being a complete, yeah, I don't know, right? But having to be self-aware, and when it comes to leadership, right, me being led by other people, I've been in situations where my leader would tell me, or my boss at the time would tell me, we do things like this, and I'm someone who would give my opinion, but like you said, Mano, at the time, because of the culture, I was like, but I work for you. This is your company. So do it the way you want to do it. I didn't feel the partnership. I felt the hierarchy, not Python. I felt like it was a hierarchy, not like it was a partnership. So I would give my 2 cents, but I always add a disclaimer. But it's your company. Do whatever you want to do. Right. I never felt like what I said actually mattered. I would just give the opinion, and I gave it solely for the purpose of saying I told you so if things went south. Right. So,
Yeah.
yeah.
I feel like we
Yeah.
had the same experience at because I was exactly the same. Stepping into my first leadership position at university, also came in guns blazing. No, but that was because I'd seen how the leaders before me had fulfilled the position. And being in Bloemfontein, in relatively conservative Free State, back then it was, and before the massive overhaul that we've had across universities in South Africa, was very like tradition and this is how it's done. Like, this is how things are done. So cool. Get elected into this position. I was a bit mean. I was mean. And one of the he was like the head of like residence life at the University of the Free State. Because now I was responsible for like the first year students. I must now create a homely environment, make them all happy, and when they miss their mom, to make them feel okay. And those first few weeks, I was really not nice. And his name was Dr. Val, and he said to me, because they'd complained, rightfully so. And Dr. Val looked at me, he said, you know, you have the opportunity to change these first years' lives and change their perception. Not that, like their lives dramatic, but you have the opportunity to change their perception on their first year experience here in Bloemfontein. So I was like, I turned over a new leaf and all was right with the world. But yes, I was exactly the same.
I think that's a great thing of like, you actually don't realize how positively you can influence someone's life. And actually, how little positivity people actually need in order to like be on your side, kind of thing. Like a compliment, and it's just the way you treat them, or just like how you run something, and how that like the immediate person you can imagine in any sort of business setting, like your first few interactions within a business are going to like shape your, especially in model, that shape your entire perception of this other business thing, right? Because they would tell you things that might not even be true. They just heard it from someone else. But then you're immediately going to go like, oh, this is really great, or I'm just here to get a paycheck. And tell you, and when you go to speak, like I was saying to myself, like, have I ever like been a bully about it? And then I was like, I have. When I was in like preschool, between the ages of 5 and 8, I was in, so much so that I've old school friends. I have some friends that I've known since I was like 3, and we've just always gone to the same schools. They will to this day still bring up, and like, you have honestly be a bully. That, yeah, honestly, like, and we laugh about
Go
it.
say,
But,
go say sorry.
It's not the trauma. The trauma.
but when I was thinking, and I literally had an interaction with my wife before I jumped on a podcast where I was like winding her up about something, and she just looked at me and she was like, "You're overwhelming me," and she walked away.
My wife does that too. My wife does exactly
walked away. But the thing that I was thinking the whole time, I was like, I bet you it's kind of like the same characteristics, right? And if you think about what involves like being a bully, it's like you want to always get your way, and like you always want to get your way, always trying to assert your opinion on people, and you kind of use it's like the social dynamics to your benefit, and then the other people, it's extremely overwhelming. And the easiest thing for them to do is just back off. They just go, yeah, cool, do whatever you want. And obviously, like, you can do that in positive and negative ways. I was like, it's interesting how those characteristics can come up in different environments and places. And then you think, imagine working somewhere for a very long time, and you have a boss that's done that for 5, 6 years, or run a team for a long period of time. that has where people are like, "Ugh, we stay here because like it's not that bad." And then new people come on and new people get owned, it's just how we do things here. And you know what I mean? Like kind of sort of creating some negative culture starts to set in. And then that's where you see that sort of, I suppose, that negative, the bad side of conformity. Let's put it that way.
And then it becomes so
Yeah.
ingrained. Then
Yeah.
it becomes so ingrained. And it's, like that, would it be classical conditioning be the reference? Yeah, where people just, when you're in that same position and you're like, okay, it's not that bad,
Yeah.
like the
Yeah,
frog
yeah.
sitting in the pot, and then you bring the water to a boil kind of thing. And then they're just like, this is fine. Everything's fine.
Mhm. Yeah, that's it. And I think when you were talking, the other thing I thought of was like the wrong thing to do when you have culture you need to work on is we're going to now go and buy a piece of software to fix this. You know what I mean? It's like, it's not going to do anything. Like, it's literally not going to do anything. People aren't going to use it. Nobody's going to start reporting things more. It's like you have a lot of groundwork to do before you even do anything. Because automating a brand wasn't automating an inefficient process, and then you're going to maximize this inefficiency. And I think that's where like the how do you solve for the issue comes back to, well, you're going to have to do a lot of groundwork, and people are actually going to have to see the needle move in a positive direction lightly. And then you bring on okay, cool, we're going to bring these other tools on to like help us continue or increase this improvement. And I think that's where you see a lot of businesses get things wrong, and then they look at the tool and they're poking it going, this doesn't work. And it's like, right.
On the groundwork aspect, a question for you, co-founder. What would you say would be the number before somebody buys and now they've got to do a bit of an overhaul on their culture? What should they do first? What's the first thing they should do?
I would say if you've identified something needs to change, you should spend between 6 and 12 months actively surveying, actively doing like comms, actively speaking, doing focus groups, but not with, there will be, let's say the bad culture set in, there will definitely be a handful of good people in the organization who are aware of all the bad shit happening.
Yeah.
And those people have to help you, not in a cringy way, champion some bit of change, right? But it has to be, we're going to do this for 12 months, and we're actually going to measure from today for the next year sentiment. And the thing that thing's interesting, right, is how you measure sentiment. You might be like, well, 85% of my employees believe that we're happy. It's like, it feels like a vanity stat. Like, oh, I got 4,000 impressions on my LinkedIn post. Who engaged? No one. It's like, how many leads you get? None. And I think it takes a concerted amount of effort for a long period of time for you to see some uptick in change. And that will be measured by, like, do people feel how stressed and do people feel in the environment? Do they feel like it's a very intense environment? And an anonymous survey tool will work for this, right? Like, do they feel like it's an intense environment? Do they feel stressed? Like, what is their productivity, performance, and pre-ism like? Because and is, there's a lot of like smaller personal things that you'd have to align with that too, but measure that over a long period of time. And if you've hit meaningful increase, then layer on a bit of technology, because then you have a bit of like, something to start working with. It sounds like a very nuanced answer, but I don't think it's very straightforward. Like, you'd have to really deeply understand like what's actually going on in the business, to such a large degree, or to such a detailed degree that you actually have be able to set out some objectives and actually be able to go like, right, we're going to do this for 12 months. People are going to get sick of us saying this. They're going to be like, stop preaching. You just got to keep doing it anyway. Because what's that saying? Like, when people are sick of hearing it, they've heard you. They probably only heard you for the first time, kind of thing. You know what I mean? So, yeah.
I mean, I feel like we excuse me, or I'm gonna say I used to, not now, before I joined Safe Workplace, underestimate the impact that the positive work culture actually has, right? On people. And it's crazy because when teams, again, I'm taking it back to psychological safety now, but when teams feel safe to speak up, right? 76% of teams that felt safe to speak up reported that they are more likely to actually raise concerns about whatever is happening within the business, etc., before they became serious issues. Right. That's the impact of having a positive culture that leans more towards promoting psychological safety. And when it comes back to culture, Netflix does it very well. There's this thing, I think it's called some Netflix. I forgot the exact term thing, whatever. But Netflix has publicly on their website. I think it's I forgot the exact term, but it's some culture deck, I think, and they highlight ways of working within Netflix, their mission, their values, etc., and they hold themselves accountable to that. Everyone, not just employees, the public knows Netflix's culture deck, right? You are okay. I don't know if anyone has, but you are able to actually call them out on this because they made it publicly available to everyone, right? And I feel like I said before, I joined Safe Workplace, I underestimated the impact or the power of a positive work culture. Yeah, my background is not very positive, so yeah.
But I mean, it's, just to echo what you said, CK, if your group of employees are speaking up and they're reporting, I mean, we've seen it and we've touched on it in previous discussions. If your employees are speaking up, that in and of itself just shows how much they trust the organization, trust the systems that have been implemented, and feel safe. They feel safe to say something and to click that button, and send a report. And that really speaks volumes. It really does.
I think the other thing that it just reminded me of is the number one number friction, especially when you have tools involved or you trying to like solve the issue of under speaking up or under reporting. Um, the belief that people are going to raise trivial things. And
Yeah.
it's like, well, there's two things. It's like people are going to raise trivial things because I think people do that more. There are different cases we have some people that everything's an issue. But the thing that we find there is great going back to the everyone's involved thing. It's like it is your responsibility to report. You are responsible for how you report and what you report, right? And so you need to use these tools responsibly. You can't be going, Ingrid stole my lunch. Or somebody used my milk in the fridge. Somebody's like, go speak to that person. You're an adult. You know what I mean? And I think when you talk about that in like culture piece, it's almost like reinforcing certain like really obvious behaviors. Like if you use any of our tools to report these things, you are not using these tools responsibly, and we're not going to, you can't engage with the level that you need us to or want us to, because you also have to behave like an adult. Yeah. That's the one thing. The second thing is the belief that people are going to tell you exactly how they feel. Like they're not going to tell things like they feel, but open door policy, whatever. Even when they do report, they're probably not hiding, but I'm not giving you all the detail. And it's almost like the expectation that you as an employer or leader had on with your people, and the understanding of like they're not going to engage with me to the level I want to. It's like they barely engage in their personal lives to that level. Like we're not all walking around being like super transparent, open people to like our partners, like just how we. So it's like we've got to get a grip and understand like there's going to be a level of visibility, and you work with what you have, and then you assume good intentions. So I think that's part of the ethnic culture decking. It's like you assume good intentions and goodwill, and you operate that way. And people slowly reveal whether they have good intentions or not when you carry on the thing. And the people that don't have good intentions, they go. But you do have some level of control over what's going on. But
Yeah, no, and I feel like me personally, the gist of it, or my understanding, my perspective, um, that number one, psychological safety plays a very huge part, right? Leadership plays a huge part, but also I keep banging on this drum. It's a two-way street, at least in my opinion. Beyond leadership, implementing policies or whatever it might be, people need to, number one, use tools effectively, and number two, unlearn and relearn what you need to in order to strive in an organization, right? Fear will always be there. It's a fact. Yeah, I might be afraid to tell Manu, hey, I didn't finish the talk. I said I'd finish. You know, that's me telling you now that I didn't finish the No, I'm kidding. But genuinely, fear will always be there. But it's a thing of being able to trust that whatever I'm saying will make a difference or should make a difference at least. And understanding that from a leadership perspective, that if someone, like you said, Ings, the higher the reporting number, the better. It's crazy because subconsciously, I didn't think that would have to iterate that because I had a chat with Rob a few weeks ago, our healthcare senior partner, and he mentioned the exact same thing in our discussion. He put a disclaimer out there that high reporting numbers are actually a good thing. In my mind, as we're speaking, I just assumed that people would think high reporting numbers are a good thing, right? But then as he broke it down, he mentioned that people get scared. They assume that high reporting numbers mean that fundamentally stuff are wrong, etc., within the organization. But as a matter of fact, it shows that people actually trust you. They trust the system in place, and they trust that leadership will ultimately take them seriously and probably actually take the next steps towards fixing whatever is fundamentally wrong.
And think about if you've got high reporting numbers, look at all that amazing data you have in order to you've got all of this information at your fingertips, whether it's something super small. If that super small thing is maybe repeating every couple of weeks, you can really identify, hey, that maybe this is a bigger issue. You've just got all this wonderful information that's helping your organization become better and identify potential risks and where you can improve, so it's not a scary thing. You want that. It's so beneficial and it's so helpful to get that insight. But yeah, I think my main takeaway from this conversation is that we're all bullies. So good.
Yeah.
Go team.
Yeah, I feel like
Good
all that
team.
things
What?
work on it.
I'm in therapy now, so working on it.
Working on it.
No, awesome. Yeah,
Awesome.
awesome. Cool. Done there.